As Australia's largest stockist of tyres and wheels, our independence allows us to run product testing in somewhat unconventional ways. Our ultimate aim is to gain insights into tyre quality and performance that allow our stores to make recommendations to our customers based on brands we know we can trust and knowledge we gain through experience. In this video, we set out to run a comparison test between Goodyear Wrangler Duratrac and Wrangler Silenttrac. In addition to the performance in various terrains, we set out to measure the difference in fuel consumption between the tyres on the same car, the same trip and in the same conditions. For this journey, we've got two identical Isuzus with similar loads where we're going to do our fuel consumption testing. On the one Isuzu, we're running the more aggressive Goodyear Wrangler Duratrac, and on the second Isuzu, we're running the Goodyear Wrangler Silenttrac. Let's take a closer look at them. So the Wrangler Duratracs we're running on the one Isuzu are 265, 65, 17, 112S. They're a nice aggressive tread pattern with nice big blocks and sipes to give you a wet road holding. Nice grooves within the blocks which will give you stone ejection and they won't capture stones. So when you deflate them in off-road conditions, they'll give you some great traction with these nice aggressive tread blocks and aggressive sidewall biters. So on the second Isuzu, we're running the Goodyear Wrangler Silenttracs. They're also 265, 65, 17, 112Hs. As the name would suggest, they are Silenttracs. So Goodyear have built an extra rubber layer underneath the tread belt to actually absorb some of the sound and make these a quieter running tyre. You'll also notice that from the tread pattern perspective, this is more of a road going pattern, but will be equally capable in off-road conditions. So you'll see a cleaner sidewall, not as aggressive as the Duratrac, but from an all-terrain pattern perspective, you'll see more of a highway type pattern to give you that performance that you're looking for on the bitumen. Part of a convoy of 5 vehicles and a camper trailer, we're heading west, stopping over on the Nullarbor for some dirt driving, as well as dropping down onto the beach to see how the tyres handle soft sand. To keep everything fair between the tyres, both utes will be carrying similar loads and will be refueled at the same time. At the end of the trip, we'll add up all the receipts and give you the results along with our feedback on how the tyres performed. The forecast is dicey and the days will be long, but we reckon this is a great route along our amazing country to really test the difference between two of Goodyear's most popular Wrangler tyres.
We've just arrived in Port Augusta. We're about 1,000 k's into the trip. We've been alternating between the two Isuzus, one running the Duratracs and the other one running the Silenttracs. I've got the Goodyear Duratracs on my car. Surprisingly, very, very quiet, quite responsive on the road. The interesting part is we've had a headwind most of the way. We've just filled up and there's only about a 2 litre difference between the two vehicles, and they're both running at around 9.3 litres per 100. So really, really impressed, even with the difference in tyres and the headwinds, they're doing very well.
So just arrived at Ceduna. We're setting up a campground right now. Very challenging for the second day of our drive. Very, very strong headwinds. But overall, I've been driving the Duratracs. Still very, very impressed with it. Quiet, very, very responsive, and the fuel consumption compared to the Silenttrac are less than half a litre per 100 difference.
The mileage has gone up slightly for the day, 10 litres per 100. We're still at 9.6 overall, so faring well. The tyres are doing extremely well on both vehicles.
It'll be interesting over the next couple of days. We're doing a bit of bitumen, a bit of sand, a bit of dirt, so we'll see how the two compare.
Driving onto Canalda Homestead, the wind didn't let up, neither did the rain. We experienced more rain than any of us had seen on the plains in a long time, which came down in sheets with heavy gusts of wind, on and off all day. This unexpected weather added the opportunity to test the vehicles and tyres in extreme weather and wet road conditions. We then turned off at Canalda Homestead, where we would get our first opportunity to run the tyres on dirt, and as it turns out, wet gravel and mud.
Started day 4, we stayed at the Canalda Homestead, so camped here for the night. Done a bit of off-roading last night and this morning, driven on both the Duratracs and the Silenttracs, and again, with the Duratracs, really, really impressed. We maintained the PSI, so we didn't drop anything. It felt like I was over the top of it. Disbursement of water was phenomenal. Then obviously we've done a swap over, had a try with the Silenttracs, and look, it performed well, but I think it was just a little bit slipperier from here to there. Yeah, what was your views?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the same thing. I mean, we started off on the Silenttracs,
kept it at 40 psi, as you said, and just driving in here, it was performing well, but you could feel that there was a bit of squirm when you hit those big muddy patches. And then later on throughout the course of the day when we swapped over, definitely felt a lot more grip with the Duratracs, just really more sure-footed on the mud surface. But overall, both tyres performing extremely well.
Yeah. We'll see how it handles later on today when we actually do drop the PSIs and do a bit of sand. But at the moment, like I said, Duratracs have been phenomenal. I'm still impressed with the Silenttracs as well.
Yeah, I think for an all-rounder touring, Silenttracs is a really good option.
I'm loving these Duratracs. Yeah, when I used that vehicle, it definitely had a lot more grip, although these are performing well for a less aggressive tyre to these Silenttracs. So Duratracs, 10.9, done 237.6 Ks with wind and rain.
Yeah, I'm running at 10.5 for this trip.
Amazes me how close it is. Like you look at a different comparison and obviously the pattern, it blows me away that it's only 0.5 of a difference at the moment. I reckon these Silenttracs are going to do very, very well on the sand.
Next up was checking the on-road sound from the Duratracs and Silenttracs. We ran the cars at the same speeds on the same roads in the same conditions with a pair of identical decibel meters. The results were interesting and confirmed why independent testing is so important. The Duratracs were much closer in noise levels compared to the Silenttracs. Now you have to consider the utes were new, which means they were better insulated when compared to older and cheaper cars. Also, the sound produced by the tires can change as they get older. But when we ran the comparison, there was very little difference between these two tires. The Silenttracs were quieter, but the Duratracs were almost as quiet. Once the sound test was done, it was time for another refuel. The trip was about to get a lot more fun as we planned to drop down onto the beach to do some sand driving. Our goal was Twilight Cove via Airbird Observatory, a great stretch of beach with a mix of hard and soft sand. After dropping the pressures down to 20 psi and the heavier cars down to 16 psi, we set off down the tight tracks leading to the beach. The drive to the observatory is magic, and the beach beyond is one of Australia's best. Just don't take it lightly. The soft sand has swallowed a lot of unprepared four-wheel drives, but this has become less of a worry in recent years since the invention of recovery boards.
The morning of day 5, and last night we struck a little bit of trouble. We couldn't quite get to Twilight Cove, which was meant to be where we were staying. It's about 5 Ks as the crow flies down the beach. Problem is, this beach was impassable. Now we could have backtracked through some of the tracks in the dunes, but we decided to set up camp because we found a really good spot.
Just driving along the beach here, just come up from the sand dunes through quite a bushy area. The tyres are running at 20 psi at the moment, which has turned out to be quite a nice pressure just for this trip. Thought that the tyres might bag out a little bit more at 20 psi. They don't look too bagged out, but certainly doing what they need to be doing. You'd think that because it doesn't have any side biters on it like the Duratracs and the other Isuzu, that it may have less grip, but it certainly fares very, very well.
So I've got the Duratracs on my car at the moment. We've dropped the PSIs down to 20 and it does make a significant difference, dropping it from 40 PSI to 20.
We woke up the next morning with a challenge ahead of us: get back onto the blacktop and back on schedule. The way back to the road took us along some muddy and sodden roads that the guys enjoyed on still lower tyre pressures. But once back on the bitumen, the most important thing was reinflating the tyres back to placard pressures. This is not only for wear and grip reasons, but also for safety. Running underinflated tyres is never a good idea at any time, but even more so when running a fully loaded four-wheel drive at highway speeds. Our next stretch was some serious Ks on the dirt road between Norseman and Hayden. This road presented a good mix of mud while still wet, and that elusive red dust that the Australian Outback is known for. So one of the most important things to consider when you go off-roading is changing your tyre pressures. It's always advisable to understand the terrain that you're going to go onto. So we've driven onto this gravel road, for instance, for a short bit, just to understand what we're about to head into, and we're adjusting our tyre pressures accordingly. So when you hit the gravel road or you climb off the bitumen, what you really want to do is extend your footprint on your tyre by deflating it a bit and also increasing your comfort levels. On the bitumen, when we run 40 psi, or our convoy's been running 40 psi, that just narrows the tyre in a bit. It gives you better fuel economy, reduces the road noise, and lets your vehicle run all better around on the bitumen. Once we get off, we dropped our tyres all the way down to 20 psi. 20 psi allows the tyre to bag out a lot more, gives us that comfort on sand driving, but also gives us the traction we need in soft sand driving. So we could tackle the beach and the dunes equally as confidently. Now that we are on corrugated gravel roads, we're dropping our pressures just a little bit, just to give us a little bit more footprint, but also to give us the comfort so that we don't shake the heck out of these cars. We'd recommend the Hyde and Norseman Road for anyone doing the run east or west. It's well maintained, wide, quiet and picturesque. It is long though, so we stopped for a night at the Breakaways, a camp maintained by the local council, and it was breathtaking as we drove in just after sunset. Camping between the rock formations was relaxing, and after a decent feed we were all ready to call it a night early, so we were ready for the last run to the National 4-Wheel Drive and Adventure Show in Perth.
So we're at our last day of driving to Perth. The dirt roads were a little bit moist, but still extracting a little bit of dust out. All the overall performance has really impressed me. It's done itself. We dropped the PSIs when we got onto the dirt late yesterday afternoon. Like no tram lining, very consistent for a tyre that aesthetically looks really good. It actually performs even better. From yesterday, noticed that these Silenttracs on the beach itself were doing a little bit of tram lining, and it doesn't disperse the sand as quick as one with open shoulders. So that led me to think that perhaps, this dirt road might give us the same kind of feeling, but it's been exactly the opposite. It's a good, well-maintained dirt road, I must say that. The car is very stable. We're doing 100 kilometers an hour at the moment as we're talking. It almost feels like it's on the tarmac, so a really good performance. I would say out of all the services that we've done, this is probably one of the best suited to this tyre, but it really does well in the dirt as well.
On the final run to Perth, we ran decibel meters again and found the results similar to our first test. The Duratrac is almost as quiet as the Silenttrac. A lot has to be said on how good the sound deadening is and how quiet the D-Max runs. But this is also a testament to how quiet the Goodyears run when on the open road. It was a long 6 days with mixed weather and changing terrain. As much as the team enjoyed the ride, the long days on the road were starting to show. Once we collated the fuel receipts, the results showed a difference in fuel consumption of only 5.4 litres in favour of the Silenttracs. Over the distance from Melbourne to Perth, the Duratracs used 352 litres of fuel, whereas the Silenttracs used only 347 litres. This difference in fuel consumption was an interesting result to quantify the comparison between the two tyres on this test.
So finally, after 6 days from driving from Melbourne in practically all the terrains excluding snow, as well as experiencing extreme weather conditions such as high headwinds, strong gusts and heavy downfall, we finally arrived at the Bob Jane T-Marts stand in McCullum Park, Perth for the annual Perth 4-Wheel Drive and Adventure shows.
In terms of the fuel mileage, it was interesting that as we progressed along the trip, the mileage stayed very close. The day that we actually went down to the beach, after filling up from that, we experienced that the Silenttracs was only about 7 litres more on our fill-ups than the Duratracs, and we expect that was partly due to because it was not clearing the sand as much, but it performed extremely well. For someone that doesn't really want to go to that a little bit more aggressive look of the all-terrain in the Duratracs, Silenttracs is definitely something that's an option. It certainly does great both on the road, on the gravel, on the beaches. It's a really good all-rounder.
Silenttrac was certainly a lot more comfortable, but what surprised me the most was with the Duratracs, it was extremely quiet. So overall, Duratrac's phenomenal. Silenttracs, it's made for touring. Duratrac's made for off-road.
Yeah, great trip.
Yeah, great trip.
Concluding with a great trip was part of the journey of testing the Goodyear tyres. Testing that gives us confidence in recommending either of these Goodyear tyres for most terrains in Australia. They certainly handled our trip and the extreme weather to Perth effortlessly. You'll find more info on our website. And if you're looking for a set of Goodyear tyres for your next Australian adventure, head to any one of our Bob Jane T-Marts nationwide.